Good morning and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about how to get disabled housing and HUD's definition, or HUD's disabled definition. Now, before I start the video, I want to let you know I do not hold a PhD. I'm not a doctor, and I do not hold a law degree, which means I am not an attorney. So we're going to be looking at the actual guidelines and federal regulation and law, and then read it as it is prescribed. Now, as most of you know, I own Section8Consulting.com. I work with tenants and landlords all around the nation, and that includes those of you that have disabilities. I'm helping you with applications and dealing with housing authorities and many, many things. So if you want to visit Section8Consulting.com, I offer consulting for those of you that have a difficult situation. However, if your issues are legally related, you might want to consider an attorney versus me. Okay? So, moving on from there, first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the actual definitions in which everything is written down. So, this is our disability overview. We'll be talking about the Fair Housing Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. The Americans with Disability Act, who is a person with a disability, and rights of the person with a disability in federally assisted housing. Then we're going to skip the zoning and land use, and then filing complaints and additional resources. Those things are not necessary for this video. Now again, I'm going to apologize for the lighting. It's just one of those dark days, and my lighting's not doing well. And I also attempted to make a live video regarding this matter, but unfortunately live videos through YouTube are not so well. It tends to have bad audio, so we're going to be doing just this right now. Alright, so moving on from there. So we have a number of different programs. Now, most of the programs you could apply for regarding having a disability and going down to the housing authority to get a housing choice voucher would include programs that run through the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, Home Investment Partnerships, better known as HOME, Emergency Solution Grants, ESG, which tends to deal more with homeless, housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, or HOPWA, HOPWA, public housing, which is often referred to by ordinary people as project-based housing. I don't really suggest that much. The housing choice voucher, as many of you know, that you receive, you fill out an application, and if you have enough special preferences or criteria, then they would likely grant you a housing choice voucher by means of either an emergency, which means it's special use, or under the many programs that you may be accustomed to hearing over the years, including Section 811, which is supportive housing with persons with disabilities that are non-elderly or non-NED. And then you have supportive housing for the elderly, which is Section 202. And then you move on to homeless assistance programs, which is often referred to as the continuum of care or other McKinney-Vino programs, better known as COC housing, which issues vouchers, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing, and so on. So there's many subsections to federal regulation as well as tax law that include many elements and aspects of disability. So let's get to the fruit of what an actual disability is in consideration to HUD. Now we should also keep in mind that this video is specifically addressing people with a disability attempting to get housing. Okay, HUD is one federal agency. Now, if you're out there trying to get a Social Security disability check, this is not the video for you, okay? The reason is because the standard in which HUD considers a disability is much lower than that of those of you that are applying for a Social Security disability check, and you're dealing with a separate federal agency called the Social Security Administration, all right? Two different deals, and one's easier than the other. Getting housing with a disability is fairly easy, compared to getting a disability check with the Social Security Administration, which is the other agency. All right, moving on down. And we're also going to touch base with the American Disabilities Act of 2008 because it makes some very clear and compelling arguments as to how you would apply. Now, many of you have dealt with housing authorities. I've dealt with them 18, almost 20 years. And so I do know the intricacies of dealing with housing authorities and what you would need to likely put in your application. It's really not the job of the housing authority to apprise you of all your rights, the rules, and federal regulations. You simply apply, and really they're not encouraged to say much more. So if you're not delivering a very good case to them as far as your disability and other things, then they'll likely give you a much lower position on the waiting list without including any type of disability. If you don't know what you're doing with this stuff, let me tell you something. My advice is get a consultant, or you need to do a lot of reading and find some accurate information, because a lot of you guys are not qualifying for disabilities despite you being disabled. And that's, like I said, again, because housing authorities typically are not going to address an issue unless you throw it right in their face, okay, and get it directly in the application. Moving on down. So, who is a person with a disability? Now, this is where it gets interesting, and I'm also going to show you a sample letter that would be taken to the doctor. A lot of you think you need to bring all your case files down to the housing authority or to the continuum of care and then prove your case as if you're in a court. You do not, okay? Why is that so? Because the housing authority employees are not trained as a doctor. They don't have a PhD. They cannot violate your HIPAA rights, and they're certainly not attorneys, so they cannot look at legal information as well. So let's go on to the actual definitions and then possibly figure out what those interpretations are. Federal non-discrimination laws define a person with a disability to include an individual with a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Now, they make that sound very serious, but it's not quite that serious. Also, an individual with a record of such impairment, meaning you have medical records of it. 3, an individual who is regarded as having such an impairment, which means somebody would know of your situation and would say, yes, I can attest that this person definitely displays obvious signs of mental or physical health or mental issues, okay? Now, one of the more clever things that the HUD and also housing authorities locally do is they throw out the bigger terms of the more severe issues. Now, the thing about it is you do not need to be paralyzed from the neck down to qualify for a disability through HUD. However, they would lead you to believe through the language that it has to be the most severe case in order for that to happen. That is simply not true. Let's talk about some of these things and what they actually might mean, all right? And again, I do not hold a PhD as a doctor, so the interpretation is quite open. In general, a physical or mental impairment includes, but is not limited to, the examples of such conditions such as orthopedic. Orthopedic is a good example would be when those of you have back problems. If you have degenerative disc disease in your back, where you have crushed disc and things of that nature, or they're disintegrating and other stuff, that's most applicable for that. Orthopedic, visual, speech, hearing, cerebral palsy, autism, epilepsy, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, human deficiency virus, which is better known as HIV, developmental disabilities, mental illness, and drug addiction, and as well as alcoholism. I would caution you guys against the drug addiction and alcoholism aspect, because if you do prove to be a low functioning person that is not giving up those factors of drug and alcoholism, then they consider you low functioning. And usually their primary offer to people that suffer from those issues is going to be project based housing. And we've all seen how that plays out on TV and in the news. Trust me, you do not want to be in a property that is usually owned by the housing authority itself, and it's usually poorly managed in most cases. Also, so they talk about some impairments are readily observable, while others may be invisible. Absolutely. Observable impairments may include, but are not limited to, blindness, low vision, deafness, or being hard of hearing, mobility limitations, and other types of impairments which are observable. Symptoms or effects such as intellectual impairments, including some types of autism, neurological impairments, e.g., stroke, Parkinson's disease, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, brain injury, mental illness, or other diseases or conditions that may affect major life activities or bodily functions. Notice the word major life activities or bodily functions. So, the thing about it is, if you're going to leave the interpretation of these medical things open to a person that makes $6 an hour that handles the phone at the housing authority, if you're going to leave your disability claim in charge of a person that barely got their GED out of a bubblegum machine and they're trying to qualify, then maybe you should get somebody to work on your case, like myself or an attorney or somebody that's qualified. That way, you actually could implement your disability within your case for applying at a housing authority. It's because most of us do understand what federal regulation is, and so I have to tell you, when they talk about bodily functions, just because you have a loss of bowel or other activity for your bladder does not necessarily mean you qualify for a disability. It's in certain terms. So, the term major life activity includes those activities that are important to daily life. Major life activities include, for example, walking, speaking, hearing, seeing, breathing, working, learning, performing manual tasks, and caring for yourself. So, all that's very much open to interpretation. There are other major life activities that are not on this list. Major life activities also include operation of major bodily functions such as functions of the immune system, special sense organs, including your nose, your skin, normal cell growth, digestive. I couldn't tell you the other one. Bowel, bladder, neurological, brain, respiratory, circulatory, cardiovascular, and doctrine, hemic, limbic, and musculoskeletal and reproductive systems. Now, if I failed to enunciate some of these correctly, that's my fault. Okay, it's very much intentional that we just keep going. I'm sure we all know those. Probably some of those are said are a better way. Under regulations implementing the ADA amendments of 2008, some types of impairments will, and here is the key word, virtually in all cases be found to impose a substantial limitation on a major life activity. Okay, I don't care how you phrase this. What they're saying there is, if you have these specific things, it's an automatic qualifier, okay? If you see something on this list I'm fixing to read, it means 99% of the time they will not be able to refute that case. So let's take a look at some of those things that are pretty much an automatic qualifier. To be found imposed, blah, 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 and we're going to go on down here, such as... So here's your examples. Deafness, blindness, intellectual disabilities, partially or completely missing limbs, mobility impairments requiring the use of a wheelchair, autism, cancer, cerebral palsy, diabetes, epilepsy, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, HIV, major depressive order, bipolar, post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, obsessive compulsive disorder, and schizophrenia. So if you have any of those, that's an automatic qualifier. There really won't be much of an argument from them on that. However, if they decide to put up a little bit of a fight, it's usually fairly easy to get past that to make the qualifying issue. Think about all this, it's all still very much open to interpretation. Now, again, I would like to tell you, if you'd like a copy of all this information, I'm happy to provide that on my website. I offer many different services besides consulting. So if you'd like to get a list of all these different things to go over or consult with me about that, then I'm happy to do so. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to move on very quickly to a sample application to your doctor. So you guys are packing around a filing cabinet, essentially, filled with paperwork and all this nonsense. You don't need to do that. It comes down to three very basic elemental questions. They give you a form. That form goes to your physician, and the physician says yes or no to three different questions, and that is the end of the story. Because the housing authority is not, because nobody is a medical doctor that works there, then they cannot ask for specific charts. They cannot keep your medical records in a safe in the room. I've heard some of these housing authorities are quite... they're attempting to do whatever they want to do, and you cannot do that, okay? They have to give you a form very similar to this, and here's what it says. And ask the doctor, yes or no. Does this person have a disability as defined in 42 USC 423, which means the inability to engage in substantial gainful activity by reason of any medical determinable physical or mental impairment that can be expected to result in death or has lasted or is expected to last for a continuous period of 12 months or less. In other words, any medical or mental problem that you have on a pre-qualifying list that's going to last more than 12 months or you're going to imminently die, that's it. You have a disability, okay? And then they go into subsection here, into B. Here's the other options that they give you. In the case of an individual who has attained the age of 55 and is blind, or the inability by reason of such blindness to engage substantial gainful activity. In other words, being employed, required skills or abilities compared to those of any other gainful activity in which he or she was previously engaged with some regularity and over a substantial period of time. In other words, they're asking whether or not you're able to maintain a job or have any quality of life. Sorry, I'm choking up a little bit here. We're talking about a lot of stuff, so it's hard to clear my throat when I'm rolling through it very quickly. And then we're going to go down to question number 2. So if you don't nail number 1 as a yes or no, then we can do down 2, which is a yes or no for the doctor. Has a physician mental or emotional impairment? Is this expected to be a long continued or indefinite duration? Well, they've not yet come up with a cure for bipolar, schizophrenia, any of that. They can treat it, they can medicate you. So there's a number of different things that could be applicable to number two, and your doctor only needs to check yes or no, and then you have a disability, okay? Again, this form is not designed to help you get a Social Security disability check. We're only talking about housing, okay? If you're going to be using this information to go and get a disability check, I suggest you go get an attorney. That is a much more serious matter. All right, beyond that, let's talk about Part B of 2. Substantially impedes his or her ability to live independently. And C is such nature that the ability to live independently could be improved by more substantial housing conditions. And then the third and last is going to be several parts to this one. Has a developmental disability. So we're going to go ahead and skip that one. I think you can read what it is. The reason I'm going to skip it is most people that have a severe developmental delay or disability would not likely be watching this video, and if they were, they would likely be unable to interpret the information. So I'm just going to maximize that so you can see it. You can pause the video and you can read all these different things. But here are some of the subsections: self-care, receptive or expressing language, learning, mobility, self-direction, capacity for independent living, and economic self-sufficiency, and so on. In other words, there's some serious issues going on in the mind where you're unable to function as a standard member of society, okay? So I don't want to get too deep in that. And that concludes this video. I wanted it to be short and to the point and show you exactly what federal law, legislation, and different things offer. I realize this is a lot of information to take in, but as you can see, never allow the housing authority to compel or make you believe that whatever problem you're having whatever problem's going on with you is not sufficient to meet a disability, okay? Because with housing, again, it does not need to be that severe. If you have something provable on the list and it's going to last for greater than a duration of 12 months, could be lifelong, or your life's going to end early because of a disease, then this would be applicable for you. And it covers a lot of different things. So don't give up, folks. Please don't. And if you need a consultant to help you with it, that's fine. I'm happy to help you. But again, I am not an attorney and I do not fight legal cases for you. I can simply guide you in a process based on the principles I have learned over 18 to 20 years of dealing with hundreds of housing authorities and also dealing with over 10,000 clients. That's the experience that I'm pulling from. So it's been fantastic having you here. Again, I apologize for the lighting. Nothing much I can do about that. Have a great day. Bye-bye.